to write articles. I've got a treatise on leverage buyouts, and I'm working on a treatise on technology law in the Court of Chancery. So, there's all that marketing kind of speaking engagements, people in and out of my office constantly because I head my practice group. Phone calls constantly. The more senior you are, the more you are sort of the point person, which is why it's good for me to get things done early before I come in, because sometimes your day takes off and is out of your control once you get in. Then there are meetings, both what we are principals in it's like a partner, but we're PC, or private corporate or professional corporation, and so rather than partners, we're principals that own it. And so we have principal meetings, and we have we're international firm, so we're about 400 lawyers, 10 offices in the U.S. and one in Germany, and so you're on conference calls, multi-office conference calls and that sort of thing, calls with clients about various issues. And then occasionally, a trial in the Chancery Court. We don't have juries there, which is one of the nice things. So I have had jury trials in other courts, but it's kind of nice because there's faster trials, and the judge knows the issues, and so you don't have to educate them as much as you do a jury. And interviewing, new applicants and that sort of thing. And like I said, there's a lot more paperwork and administrative stuff. Lawyers have to keep every hour that they, every fraction of an hour you have to write down. Even if it's not billable, but most of it, what you do is billable, and so you write it down, or now it's in the system, and enter that in at the end. Make sure you've entered all that in at the end of the day. That's probably the worst part of the job is just trying to keep everything written down like that. But that's sort of generally it. For me, the most exciting parts are sort of the creative parts in terms of talking to clients about what their goals are and coming up with a plan and creative plan to try and reach those goals in the most expedited way possible. Yes?
In chapel, you mentioned that you had to go into hiding and told that story. I didn't know, has life changed since then, now that you know that you're important enough to have people threaten your life?
The sick thing about this is, I think that really, that's when I started getting all this recognition, like the super lawyers and the chambers, USA top lawyers and that sort of thing. It's like, man, she must be really good. They want her dead, or something. I think that's where it started off. So I think, it's sort of, the old saying, any publicity is good publicity kind of thing. So people got to know who I was that way, and then, you have to sustain that. But so in that way, I think it's changed, or had an impact on my career in terms of, raising the profile. But he was convicted and he was 72 at the time, which is like, come on, get a life. But so he was convicted and sentenced in the Old Bailey in England to something like 18 years, which I figured was pretty much a death sentence. Anyway, and so last I heard, he was still languishing in prison over there, and I don't think he would, care anymore. Not with the same firm. I don't even have that client anymore, so I don't think he would have the same vendetta even if he did get out. When we came back from hiding, we actually did move, though. I mean, something about having your name on this memo, and we moved to. It was actually, I think, the Lord, God sent me, because we moved into this former CEO's house, and he had all the security already built in, and we got a real seal on it, but it was, it felt so much more secure because there was like this thing that sounded when anybody came up your driveway, and there were all different like heavy doors and combinations, and everything would freak some people out, but was great for us. So we did, so that was another thing, we did move afterwards, and one thing I didn't tell you, and I should tell you, is after that murder for hire, about 2 or 3 years after that happened, I woke up at 3 in the morning and I had this story running through my head. And it's funny because after the kidnapping thing when I was 19, my mother had bugged me about writing this story down and sending it to Christianity Today, and I never got around to it. I just felt compelled to get out of bed and write this thing down, and I sent it into Christianity Today, and they said, well, it's not really our genre, but we have this sister publication called Christian Reader that's sort of like Reader's Digest, and we'll publish it there. And so they published it there. I didn't think anything more of it, but I thought I had never even heard Christian Reader. Has anybody seen a Christian Reader before? Yeah. It wasn't even a publication I'd ever heard of. And the weird thing is that about a month or two after I published it, I got a letter from Christianity Today enclosing an email from Wasilla, Alaska. Was this woman, and it turned out to be, sound familiar? Anyway, it wasn't Sarah Palin, but it was my kidnapper's daughter who was living there, and she said, I read my father, my kidnapper, and my mother gave me your article from Christian Reader. And she said, and this is just what I needed in my life. She said, I've been having trouble with relationships with men, and I went to a counselor, and she was talking to me about my life, and I told her about this, how my father was arrested, and the truck was fingerprinted, and he was taken off, and how my friends weren't allowed to come over to my house anymore, and that sort of thing. And she said, and I knew my father was a changed man, but I never knew what went on that night. And she said, and your article was just, when I needed it and what I needed, and I think God had you write it for me. And I read that and I started bawling because it just, it was the Lord, I think, working through me to wake me up at 3 in the morning and get that published. But the weird thing was the story started off with the whole murder for hire thing, and it was only sort of saying, looking back and at my kidnapping and saying, I know that the Lord was with me through that, and I knew He would be with me through the murder for hire situation. And so it wasn't even like you had to really, how did my kidnapper find Christian Reader, and then how did he find that this was, the story? So, even how she came by the article is sort of a miracle to me.